Yo, what's going on, guys? It is time for another reaction video, and this time I'll be reacting to The Line Actually Begins Construction. Just a little bit of info on this. I'm a little bit familiar with this project. If you're not sure what The Line is, it's probably one of the most ambitious architectural or construction plan to date. They're probably going to cover everything in this video, but just imagine like the future of living in a city, kind of what that could look like, and that's what this video is supposed to be about. So let's check it out.
Drone footage revealed that construction on Saudi Arabia's The Line actually started. The project has been heavily debated in recent months, and most said that it's too gigantic to build and rather looks like something out of a science fiction movie. But
straight up looks like out of a video game, man. Like, look at this.
Too gigantic to build.
This is crazy. Like, I don't want to talk too much before the video gets into it because I want to see what they're going to go over. But this is one of those things that, like, if they can successfully do this, it could change the way we live as a whole.
And rather looks like something out of a science fiction movie. But now that construction has actually begun, how will this turn out? Could this be the beginning of the world's greatest mega project ever? Or will the line become a $1 trillion construction mistake that will eventually be abandoned? Let's find out. The exact plan of the line was unveiled by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in July 2022, and we already covered it in our first video about the line. He proposed 2 parallel 500-meter tall skyscrapers made of reflective glass, which are supposed to span 170 kilometers through the desert. This would be equivalent to 2 lines consisting of 2,001 World Trade Centers each.
That's insane, man. So if you've ever been to New York and you've seen that building, just imagine 2 rows of those just like as far as the eye can see. That's crazy.
The line is not just the biggest mega project ever proposed, it's a new way of living. There would be no cars inside the city, and everything you need would be within a 5-minute walk. All of the energy would be produced through wind and solar farms, and in addition, any water used will come from a carbon-free desalination plant. All of this would make the line a zero-carbon city. The proposal caused a mixture of shock, awe, and suspicion, and while the trailers were watched millions of times on YouTube and other platforms, there was hardly any information on what
I know about it and what we're seeing so far, and I know it's still early in this video for me to be pausing again, but it looks amazing, you know, like it seems like something that would be amazing to see in person and to live in. But then I also think of things like when we just went through over the last couple of years with COVID. And so if everybody is that on top of each other per se, how much worse would an outbreak be in a living scenario like this, where escaping it, if the average person doesn't even own a vehicle, you can't just jump in a car and drive away. You have to rely on some form of public transport. Even if you were to quarantine, stay home, you're still in such close proximity to everybody else. So that's the one negative side of it I can see, but I'm sure there's a lot of positive things about it. But that's where my mind goes first, is what would happen in that type of a scenario.
Really happening on the construction site. Therefore, almost everyone believed that the line was just a publicity stunt to gain attention. But then, around 3 months after the presentation of Mohammed bin Salman, things took a surprising turn. Construction began. On the 19th of October 2022, drone footage of the construction site was revealed by OT Sky. The video shows dozens of excavators digging trenches along the desert, which will form the foundation of the line. The excavation already leads very far inland. It's hard to say how far exactly it goes, but they could be close to the mountains in the background. According to the official map on NEOM's website, the line starts at this bay and cuts through these mountains. Because of the terrain and since the sea is visible in the background, the footage was probably taken somewhere here, so the excavations might already be 10 to 20 kilometers long. On top of that, more infrastructure is being built around the whole project. On Google Maps, there are multiple developments visible. There is a whole site with offices and camps close to the mountains, a NEOM community with a football field and swimming pools, and a NEOM Experience Center. Since these images aren't up to date, there are probably a lot more by now. So, now that construction has really started, how could this turn out? There's nothing comparable to this in the whole world, so we can only speculate what will happen next, but we can say that there are basically 3 possible outcomes. The first possibility is that construction on the line will come to a halt in a few months or even years without any people moving in. Similar to the Jeddah Tower or the Dubai Creek Tower, it could turn into a project where its construction status remains unclear. In both cases, stunning renderings were shown and great promises were made. Construction was started and it looked like the buildings would actually be finished, but then everything came to a halt and no progress has been made since. However, this seems to be a less likely outcome for the line, since it is backed by an entire country and received massive attention from the whole world. Getting the project even close to completion could be a...
The other thing I want to know is these 2 rows, right? From all these renderings and even just seeing the vehicles in the trenches, how much space is between one row of buildings and the other? Because it doesn't look like it's a real big span. And if that's the case, I know that the exterior of each side is going to be all glass, which will allow for a lot of natural light and what have you into the property. But what about the people on the inner side? If it's that tall of a building and it's that long, is the inner sides ever going to see like true sunlight? Is there going to be too many shadows and shade throughout the day because one wall or the other is essentially constantly blocking it? So it seems like on the inner sides that it could potentially be dark and dreary at the ground level. Now, maybe some of the upper level area might get exposure to the sun, but it seems like if you're down on the ground, you're not going to get hardly any exposure to the sun.
Great opportunity to bring more tourists and investors to Saudi Arabia. The second scenario is that Saudi Arabia heavily invests in their current plans, and that over the next decades, the country really achieves what it promised in its trailers. Implementing certain features could definitely be possible, like having no cars, generating 100% renewable energy, and implementing the idea of vertical living. However, when it comes to the sheer size of the project, it just seems to be undoable. We mentioned earlier that the line is supposed to have a similar height as the One World Trade Center, which took around 8 years to complete. While that's still a reasonable time frame, Saudi Arabia wants to build a structure of similar height, but 170 kilometers in length. That would essentially be like building a continuous strip of 2,000 One World Trade Centers. And since the project contains 2 of these lines, it would actually be like building 4,000 of them. Simply multiplied by 8 years each, we would end up at 32,000.
See what I'm talking about real quick? The space in between. Now I know these are all just renderings, but when you're looking at the boat down in the water, the length of that boat, it only looks like about 2 boats width. From this graphic, it could either be a badly done graphic, or they're truly envisioning it being that narrow, which to me is just strange. And you can even see here in the drawing, look how dark it looks. So that just seems kind of unappealing, unless every unit has the full width of one of these walls. So you have sunlight coming from one side and shadow on the other. I don't know, but it just seems kind of like that part may not work out well.
Years. Of course, Saudi Arabia would build them much faster since they could start working on multiple parts at once, but it illustrates the scale quite well. Essentially, it would be a task for centuries. to give you another idea, around 40,000 workers constructed the Three Gorges Dam in China, and it took them 17 years. But with a height of just 180 meters and a length of merely 2.3 kilometers, it's tiny compared to the line. But there is a third possible outcome. Given that they have already started construction, there might be a compromise. At the start, we asked if this could be the greatest megaproject humanity has ever seen, or a trillion-dollar construction mistake. But maybe there is another option. Like many of you in the comments of our last video already said, Saudi Arabia could build it, but not at the insane lengths they envisioned. The line is built as 5-minute walk segments, so they could essentially build the whole megaproject bit by bit. Depending on the demand, they could simply extend the length when needed. In addition, the height of the line could be adjusted, making the project much more realistic and easier to build. With half of the height, the whole concept of vertical living remains the same, and all of the features could still be implemented. Even if the line is built at a much smaller scale, it could be the world's first modern car-free city and open the world up to an entirely different way of living. Across the world, there are multiple initiatives to make cities more car-free. However, these have been limited to reducing car usage rather than removing cars completely. Most major cities are centered around the car, so trying to change this is incredibly complicated. With the line, they get to start again from scratch. It could be the first larger city in the 21st century where the number of car journeys reaches zero. All of a community's basic amenities are intended to be within a walkable distance. And if not, a proposed underground railway system can be used for longer journeys throughout the line. When the first people start moving in by 2030, they could be living in the proposed high-tech society, but on a much smaller scale.
By 2030, I don't think they could have very much done in that time. That's only 7 years. We're about to be at the new year. That would be only 7 years, and they're saying it took 8 years just to construct a single one of the buildings of One World Trade Center. Now, that obviously was more difficult because it's in the middle of a busy city and more hurdles to get through. But even though they're working with an open space, they still have to get the materials there. So it's equally as difficult to get the materials out there. But 7 years, I mean, they might have one building done by then, possibly 2 or 3. So, yeah, I doubt people will be moving in 2030. I mean, who knows if this is something we'll see a phase of it being completed in our lifetime. Who knows?
So, which of these outcomes is the most likely? What are experts saying about this insane project? It's a project that not many experts will agree is feasible, particularly under the extremely tight timeline. Anthony Vives, Chief Urban Planning Officer at NEOM, told CNBC, "I want to be clear about this. NEOM is a complex, bold, and highly ambitious undertaking, and is most certainly not an easy one to deliver. But we are making strong progress, and it's exciting to see the vision come to life." On the other hand, a lot of experts not involved in the project are mentioning other concerns. Marshall Brown, professor of architecture at Princeton University, told DAZN, "There would be so many physical and environmental phenomena that would have to be dealt with to achieve this incredibly minimal and singular character that the renderings propose." So, what do you think? Now that construction has started, will this project succeed in some way? Will people actually live there in the future? Or will this project turn into an abandoned mega project? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching and supporting our videos.
So I think it's an amazing concept, an amazing project, and the fact that they've broken ground on it is even more impressive. I don't want to be a complete skeptic on it, but I also want to be realistic. And so the sheer mass of the amount of stuff they need to build that, right? Like, the materials, just the materials alone, getting it out there is one obstacle, right? Getting workers, probably not so difficult. You can get plenty of people who are willing to work. But the infrastructure, they're talking about doing tunnels underneath for mass transit. When does that come? Do you start with the mass transit underground before you start putting these big buildings, because you have to have that infrastructure underground first? I wouldn't imagine that you could have these skyscraper height buildings, and then after they've got a sound foundation, that you'd come backtrack and start tunneling. So that alone seems like it would set the project back from even getting started, because you have to get that part done first. And how far do you do the tunneling? Do you just put it down there but you don't actually make it active because there's no need for it yet and it's just going to be short distances, but you're laying the groundwork ahead of time to prepare for it? And then my other concerns with the inner area never getting enough sunlight. So that could have temperature problems, that could have problems with vegetation, that could cause problems with mildew and mold and disease, things growing because there's never enough sunlight to keep things clean and sanitary, because as we know that the sun often will kill off a lot of bacteria and germs. Yeah, so there's just a lot of things to consider with that. I'm not as concerned with utilities, electric, water, and what have you, because there's plenty of ways that they can orchestrate that. And then going carless is not completely out of the question, but there still has to be some way to travel back and forth to wherever the nearest town or city is. I don't think they mentioned that. How close is it to the next closest city? What's the distance between there? And will you be able to travel back and forth between those cities by car or train, or will you be limited to only an airport? So is this going to be in the middle of nowhere, and your only way in and out of there is to hop on a plane? So what happens if something catastrophic happens there? Essentially, everybody's trapped there with no ability to exit. And if it's out in the desert land, like they're saying, you can't leave on foot or anything like that, because you would have to span way too far in high temperatures. So there's just a lot of things to consider with this. I think it would be amazing if they can do it. Hopefully it's something that if they do truly go through with the full project, that I get to see some form of it in my lifetime. But the amount of time it seems that it would take to finish the entire project, I don't think it would be possible to see the entire thing in my lifetime. Who knows? Maybe they'll discover some faster ways of doing the construction, some new techniques, some new things to make it more efficient in the process. But there's just certain things with construction that you can't really cut any corners or speed it up. It's just, it takes that long, and there's no way really to make it more efficient than it already is. So I'm rambling on at this point, but I think it's a really intriguing project. I think it's just the thought of it alone, it could change the way that we view developing cities in general. So tell me what you guys think in the comments. If you've heard about this before, if this is completely new to you, do you think it's doable? If it's not doable, what potential things do you see that could go wrong that maybe I didn't mention already? Or what you think is great about it. I'm curious to know y'all's thoughts for sure. If you are new here and you like this video, make sure to subscribe so that you can see more content from me. If you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later.